Yeah, the creators never intended. They never intended to do right by this story. They never intended to stay true to Tolkien. Look, if you want to change his story, I just got to say the same thing that he had to say about it if you're trying to change his story.
Shut up.
The creators of Rings of Power never planned to stay true to Tolkien. We kind of knew that when we watched the show. But when you hear what they have to say and what comments they've made recently, it's clear that they never ever intended to be accurate to Tolkien's work. So I'm going to read a little bit of the process, of their thought process when they were, picking who the lead character of the show was going to be, as well as casting Morfydd Clark, right, to play Galadriel. So the casting of Morfydd Clark in the Rings of Power, the massive Prime Video prequel series, launched to extraordinary fanfare and in some circles, extraordinary derision. In 2022, the Welsh actress Clark, who stretched to the full height, will still need her tiptoes to brush 5'5", didn't even fit the canonical stature of Galadriel, the elven lady of the wood. In Tolkien's book, she is somewhere around the realm of 6'4". So right there, they chose to cast someone that wasn't even close to the stature of Galadriel. They didn't even want to make her appear to look the same. The decision to make Galadriel the lead protagonist of the Rings of Power was a day one, minute one choice for the creative team, McKay tells me. Watching Blanchett's statuely Galadriel, they sought to understand, what if you go back thousands of years before the Jackson films? Okay, before the Jackson films. I don't know if that's an insert or whatever, or if that's a quote. What if you go back thousands of years before the Jackson films and she's on a battlefield with a sword? That was the first image I remember really grabbing onto and going, okay, this could be something so distinct and different from maybe what people are expecting. But subverting fan expectations would not be an easy feat, particularly when the actress they selected to do so completely changed our conception of the character, McKay says. So right there, this is their coming out story of saying, we want Galadriel to be the main character right off the bat. Day one, minute one, Galadriel's the main character. I wonder what went into that thought process. Was it literally, who is a memorable character to do member berries in, so we don't have to introduce a new character, so we don't have to do the legwork of trying to get the fan buy-in or the non-fan buy-in, and we could just do a recognizable name from the Peter Jackson trilogy. It's got to be an elf. Who are the strong women elves? Because we got to have a woman elf. This can't be about Elrond. No way. This absolutely cannot be about Elrond. He's a dude. Who's the strong female character that would be around? We know Galadriel. You know what would be an interesting choice? What if instead of her being majestic and tall, like the book says she is, and being a powerful leader, being a formidable enemy to Sauron, in the books, Sauron sees Galadriel as the only opponent in Middle-earth that is truly a threat to him. What if, instead of her being that, we just put her in a battlefield with a sword? What if we just make her a warrior boss? Again, this subverting the lore to try to make a powerful woman a younger version of herself. So a girl who's 3,400 years old at this point in the Second Age, and We want her to act like a man. We want her to act like a warrior dude because yeah, we just don't want the womanly figure. We don't want a powerful woman who can literally destroy entire areas with her conjuring and magic and her power. We want her to be blunt force with a sword fighting. We want her to be looking like a man on the battlefield. They literally downgraded her strong femininity as a character to make her look more like a man. Tell me if I'm the one who's misogynist. Kind of sounds to me like we're going to put front and center a female character, not just a female character, a beloved, probably the female character of the Middle Earth story, the Middle Earth history, like the female character. And we're going to downgrade her from the high stature, literally, but also reputationally, that she's at, to make her more of like a layman, to make her more like a soldier and less authoritative. Less authoritative. That's crazy to me. But from day one, minute one, that was their intention because they thought it would be interesting. It would be what people are not expecting, right? It would be, this could be something so distinct and different from maybe what people are expecting. Since when you're doing an adaptation of a book or an existing IP with plenty of story and history and canon behind it, that you say, we're going to do that because we paid a lot of money for this and we want the baked in fan base. And so the first choice, day one, minute one, we want to fundamentally change a character that everybody loves. Because it would be what they're not expecting. My goodness, how stupid do you have to be? Let's see. So yeah, they talked about the audition process of Morfydd Clark. The second Morfydd Clark spoke, it was over for us. Weber wrote in an email, she has a timelessness about her. She seems both young and impossibly wise and self-assured at the same time. First off, she doesn't need to look young. She can look middle-aged. She's going to live for thousands of years. She's already been at this point 3,400 plus years old, at least. Why does she need to look young? It's like they're like, how many years is it between the Rings of Power being created and the events of the Fellowship of the Ring? Oh, it's something like thousands of years. Okay, let's go ahead and make her look younger because it's a lot of time that's passed. They didn't even consider, when was she born? Well, they got one thing right. She was born in Valar, that's correct. No, Valinor, that was correct. But they didn't even take to consider that maybe she should look middle-aged, because at a certain point, elves, once they reach maturity, kind of just plateau in how they look for a really long time. But no, they had to make her look young. They had to make her act young, as if she's not learned any big life lessons at all in the past 3,500 years. It helps, of course, that Clark is naturally mimic the voice of the ancient fantastical creature, or whatever. This is about her background in Wales, where she comes from, and how English is hard for her to speak. But when she does it with an accent, as if or when she speaks, Elvish, everyone thinks she's amazing. But the zealous praise of her castmates and crew couldn't protect Clark when the Rings of Power hit Prime Video. Almost exactly 2 years ago, fan reactions were immediately inescapable and intense. Audiences review bombed the series across Rotten Tomatoes, Galadriel, and by extension Clark, incited fury for reasons both legitimate and obtuse. And I'll be honest with you, read this ahead of time, I agree with almost everything that's being said here. There's a little bit at the bottom I don't agree with. That's just them whining. Viewers denounced Clark's appearance for not being lore accurate. They railed against the character's penchant for rage, arguing she acted like the worst immature teenager. That's correct. They claimed she was annoying. Correct. Because she was so annoying. She just was like, I'm better than everybody. I can kill an orc in under 5 seconds. And nobody else can. All my bannermen. Why did she even have bannermen at the top of season 1? Why didn't she just go by herself if she's so awesome? Unnecessary fan fiction is how they described it. And a drag. Yeah, because she's dumb. She's got nothing going on up here. Her character is written in a very shallow way. Now, here's the thing. I'm not going to dog on Morphed Clark. I will dog if she attacks the fans, but I'm not going, for people who just don't like the show and call them names, but I'm not going to dog on her because I haven't seen her in anything outside of a very poorly written story, a very poorly written script. So I don't know if she can actually act well or not. I don't know. Different than like, you know, Amandla Stanberg from The Acolyte, who's just a plank of wood. She doesn't know how to emote worth anything. But I'm not going to dog on Morphed Clark because maybe she is really trying, but the writing and the dialogue is so crap that she doesn't know how to deliver it correctly. That might be the case. I don't know. Her lack of behavior resembles the Blanchette's millennia older version of the elf. Elon Musk, this is actually hilarious. Elon Musk took to Twitter to target Galadriel for getting to be the only brave and smart and nice character, while the male characters are all cowards, jerks, or both. He also claimed Tolkien is turning in his grave. 100% agree, Elon. 100% agree. Others published paragraphs about why Galadriel needed to be seen with her family in order for the show's timeline to make sense. One writer published a Forbes essay claiming Clark's Galadriel was an unlikable protagonist who lacks basic social skills. Correct. And what's interestingly enough is that's how she comes across. And honestly, that's how she's written. But what's funny is in the recent interviews with the actors and creators of season 2, they are saying things like this. So it's like they don't even understand what the character of Galadriel is supposed to be. Listen to this really quickly and how he describes Galadriel in passing.
As the great deceiver, kind of gets to do both. Mm-hmm. You get to see him be a version of himself that can deceive someone as wise and brilliant as Galadriel, but at the same time as
wise and brilliant as Galadriel. They say that it is important that they set up Sauron as being a deceiver, which he is. As when he's Anatar, he deceives Celebrimbor. That's all correct, right? But what's funny is they reference that he's deceiving Galadriel, who's supposed to be very wise and powerful at this point. But the writers decided to be like, let's put her in the battlefield and put a sword in her hand. Let's make her young and naive. 3,400-year-old young naive elf. And she lacked basic social skills. I agree 100% with these comments, especially Elon's. Many such opinions were articulated thoughtfully, leading to the nuanced debate over Tolkien's text. Yes, which is what we should be doing. It's crazy to me that the creators cannot open any text or quote that Tolkien has ever made. Like, give us one quote that Tolkien made that gives you any room to do what you've done to his story, right? People were complaining, right, about how he spelled the word dwarves in his books, right? And he said, his response was, I assisted in writing the dictionary, which is true. Do not lecture me on how I choose to spell dwarves in my story in a fictitious world. He has the right to do that. He also made a comment about why the age-old question, why did they just not ride the eagles to Mordor? And he responded with, I actually can't remember how he responds. That would actually be fun to pull up. Let me pull that up.
And I actually have here a letter written to me by a fellow who's very, very fond of the Lord of the Rings.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And he asked me in the letter.
So someone wrote him a letter. He's very fond of the Lord of the Rings. All right. And this is the question he asked in the letter.
Why they didn't just fly the eagles into Mordor. And I told him I get this same question. The people run into me at the pub and ask why didn't they just fly the eagles to Mordor?
Mm-hmm.
It would have made the quest a whole lot easier. And I told him the same thing that I'm telling you right now. Shut up.
That's pretty good. That's the kind of guy who wrote this story. And so, no, it's not interesting to fundamentally change a character. And yes, it does. I believe the winning side of the debate over Tolkien's texts always lies with what has been written down. And if you divert from that, you better have a really good reason. I wouldn't say all of the choices Peter Jackson and the creators of his trilogy I agree with when they made the Lord of the Rings and what things they chose to not fundamentally change, but edit out of the story. I wouldn't agree with all of them. But the thing is, they started from a place that was, what did Tolkien care about? We want to communicate those values, and the movements of the story are consistent with the movements of the book. I've read the books. I have watched those films. I am watching this piece of garbage from Amazon Prime, and they don't compare. They don't compare in respect in the slightest. In the slightest. All right, so they go on. But too often, the attacks were little more than misogyny and anti-wokeness dressed up as loyalty to source material. Now, I've already said it. No misogyny from here. Galadriel, let me just say this. Galadriel was perfect the way she was written in the history of this timeline. If you wanted to tell a young Galadriel story, you should be back in the First Age during the process of her coming to Middle Earth. You might have a little bit more leeway in writing her character because she actually was a bit younger then. But no, you chose to write her at, post-Enlightenment Galadriel, And the creators were saying the super wise Galadriel, but this show is not portraying her as wise, not wide either, but also not wise. They're portraying her as lacking basic social skills, annoying, right? and a drag. That's how they're describing her. And so, no, it's not misogyny. And I'm not going to say that there wasn't anybody that has said misogynist things. I'm just going to say it's probably the tiniest of fractions of people on the internet that has boiled it down to misogyny because she's a woman. First off, I'm not mad at Galadriel as a character or choosing to make her a lead role. I'm more upset at the establishment of Hollywood, where every single movie and show has to have a female lead because they're trying to make up for time lost. I don't have a problem with saying, let's make more female leads. I have no problem with that. If everything has to be that, and you want to make Galadriel a main character, then tell her story in the First Age. During the Rings of Power, when those were created, yes, she receives one of those rings, but she is not the main character around the deception of Sauron in the story. She's not even close geographically to where the rings are being made, and even close geographically to when Anatar, Sauron, is working with Celebrimbor for like 50 years or something crazy like that. It's a long time. She is married and with her daughter on like I think they're on the other side of the Misty Mountains, if I'm remembering correctly. They're not even, they're blocked off by an entire landscape and mountainous region. Yeah, the creators never intended. They never intended to do right by this story. They never intended to stay true to Tolkien. And I'm just going to say, like, look, if you want to change his story, I just got to say, the same thing that he had to say about it if you're trying to change his story.
Shut up.
That's what I would say. Shut up. Shut the heck up, man. Because we don't want this crappy story. Start over, cancel it, abandon ship, and stop putting out this garbage. This is absolute garbage. Stop trying to subvert the expectations of the audience. Give us what we want, or tell a brand new story that you wrote.